Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sonic Movie Show, the only show that covers video game movies. Yes, that's right, we're here to review yet another one. My name is Ethan, and with me here to take it all the way back to the USSR, as always, is Devin.
Partners make us great.
That's right. And with us is another partner we have on these video game movie reviews, the one and only David. How you doing?
Are you in need of succor?
Perfect. Yes, these are quotes from me. Go on.
I was gonna say I have a couple good ones too.
Same.
This
There's a
is
couple
no time
early.
for American emotion. It's the perfect game. You know how much we hate those motherfuckers. Fuck commie bastards. Not as many as the next movie. Spoilers.
I liked Mr. Rogers. I think we should vanish.
That's if we get canceled for the clip that
Yeah.
Ethan was talking about before we started recording.
We might get canceled for the game show. We'll get to that later. Yes, we watched the 2023
forgot.
film Tetris. We're here to review it, give our opinions, rank it. Give it a tier, put it in a tier list. And and then we're going to play a fun little game show at the end based off the movie that we watched. Gentlemen, I think
Start your
suffice it to
engines.
say, no, that was the last movie review. Suffice it to say, I think we all know what Tetris was. I'm sure we've played Tetris to an extent. I'm sure the audience has played Tetris a good amount. Yes, the L falls, and then hopefully it clears a line, which makes a W. But I just want to, between the three of us, I want to start with Devin, go to Dave, and then myself. And just, what was the first kind of Tetris game you played? And you good at it?
David, you go first. I have to think about it.
I was hoping you were going to go first because I don't know. I don't know what I play. I mean, I've for sure played it. It probably was on. Well, what was it on? I want to say like Game Boy or like Game Boy Advance or something, but I don't know if I did. Maybe
I can
computer.
easily see on a Flash website playing it, you know what I mean, in computer land.
Yeah.
I can see kids playing it there. That's probably where we have all played it in the past.
I don't think I had it on any game console because I would have never, I was never into games
Gaming.
like that.
Well, you
Yeah.
do own it on
Gaming.
Steam. You own Tetris Effect.
I do.
On Steam,
I know. I
which
have
you
not
should
yet
play.
played it.
You can play it in VR or
It's
you
not
can play
installed.
without VR. It is Transcendence. It is literally amazing, and I highly recommend it.
It probably is really fun in VR.
I mean, it is. That version in VR is incredible. I'll give you, Devin, some more time to think. I have played Tetris on the original Game Boy. I have my copy and my big fat original Game Boy in storage, so I don't have it for display.
Whoa, bro.
My big fat chonky Game Boy. The front plate for the screen fell off, and I can't find that, so
Oh
it's in
my
another
God.
box in storage. But that Game Boy never really turned on, even after I swapped batteries. But I have my favorite version of Tetris, and which I think might be the best version of Tetris, is Tetris DS. Tetris for the Nintendo DS. I believe it was actually made by Nintendo themselves, and it featured like a bunch of different modes in addition to just regular marathon Tetris, each based off different NES games. And like some of these were pretty fun. There was like a mode where there's no floor and you have a cluster of Tetris pieces, and you're supposed to try to catch falling ones, and you can rotate the whole thing by 90 degrees, and you're trying to make a 5x5 square of pure blocks, and they explode. It's very fun. Highly recommend Tetris DS. But yeah, Tetris Effect was kind of the big one that I got really, really into within the past 10 years easily. I actually kind of considered maybe platinuming that game on PlayStation, and realized that no, they ask too much of you in that game for Tetris for sure. Devin, what kind of Tetrises have you Tetris-died?
I've definitely played it maybe on mobile phone or on some maybe not even official Tetris, a Tetris knockoff, on addictinggames.com or free math games. Shout out to the 2000s kids out there who knew that was the only free one you can get on your computer at school. So I've played a little bit of that, and I've definitely played different variations of it. I don't think I've played. I've seen people play like Tetris 99 and stuff, and that's always seemed cool.
Oh, right.
Um,
That's the Battle Royale Tetris.
but the reason I've never really like played it probably more than once or twice in a sitting is because I'm not good at it, or maybe I don't have the patience to be good at it. Um, I just, my brain just can't operate the shapes that quick enough, and yeah, I'm probably not too good at it to this day. Um, I've always appreciated the game for what it is. I think it's, a simple but unique concept. I can see, like, going into this movie before we watched it, I was very interested in like more about Tetris, because I've always known that's like, oh yeah, it came out of the USSR, and it's
Right.
like people don't know that. It's kind of like a fast fact. At gaming trivia night. So I think it has it sounded like it had an interesting story. So going into the movie that we watched, I
For
was
sure.
interested in that way. But yeah, not much of someone who's played. I haven't really played it that much, um, but think it's generally cool. I like watching other people who are good at it play, and I'm like, wow, that's
Oh,
crazy.
right. Yeah,
It's like
every
when we
year.
played, Mr. Driller. That kind of like those kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
style games where it's like I'd rather watch someone who's good at games play it, because I just get frustrated with myself that I can't hold my end of the bargain.
Man, I want a Mr. Driller movie now. Like that little
uh,
dude.
Starring
Man,
Jack
he
Black.
goes yes, starring Jack. No, I want like starring like Kiefer Sutherland or like an action hero to be cute little pastel pink and blue Mr. Driller as he digs through candy with his big old drill. Um See, but that's different though. In that game, the blocks are beneath you. You're the thing that's falling, if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah. But like I'm saying, like
Tetris.
that
Yeah, yeah,
kind
yeah.
of like
It's a high
tunnel.
score chasing block type puzzle game where you're not solving a puzzle, just the act of playing. Like people will call
Yeah,
Tetris a puzzle game, but like it's not asking an equation or a question for you to solve. It's just
wasn't
an
there
action kind of puzzle, I guess.
wasn't there that kid who recently like actually beat Tetris? Like no one's ever done it before, and he got to like
You
level
beat it?
99999 or whatever it was, and the
So
game just froze. I mean, he didn't beat it because there's no way you can beat it in that sense, but he got to
right,
the highest possible
the actual
score to where the
program
game
basically
where it
crashed.
broke. It was like some
Yeah, so like
14-year-old kid or whatever on Twitch
there's
that he
two
like freaked out. I
competitive
remember seeing the reaction.
There's two competitive Tetrises. There's the Tetris on the NES, which is like classic Tetris that people will play, and then an arcade game, Tetris the Grandmaster, which you can actually play on modern systems now, which is really good. Which has a more of a it's a hard, more championship style marathon Tetris, and that every year is the big championship for that, where it is just an endless like battle. I heard that story, but I didn't really look into like what the specifics were on it. Um, Speaking
I just
back
know
to
he
the
got really excited, and it
oh
looked
yeah,
cool that
yeah,
he
oh
like
yeah.
he freaked out once the game just froze and the music was like repeating just the one last note that it was doing.
Well, I'm sure it's like the first time someone like got to level 256 in Pac-Man, which is beyond the game's scope, and it crashes. Like you hit the end because this old computer, code didn't account for that far, because it just wanted your money. And actually, speaking about Pac-Man, it's the only game I can really compare it to Tetris to Pac-Man, because in both cases the game is so simple, so simplistic, and like the way the code and like the game mechanics work together is almost like if you were to add anything to it, to the actual game itself, you make it worse. If they added a fifth Tetris piece, of course, granted they have 4 blocks. I don't know if that's even possible. If they were to add a fifth piece, it would be bad. If they were to, try to change how it works, besides like at one point they're like, yeah, you get to see the next piece coming. And actually Tetris DS changed the fact that like, yeah, if you can just keep pressing the turn, your piece isn't gonna stick until you stopped hitting turn. But I think you need to hit it really fast, like almost frame perfect. That type of stuff. But whenever they've tried to do like sequels to Tetris, it's always a worse game. It's always just like you just need modes and like a cool like a Tetris Effect is just a presentation style and has like a mechanic that makes it not as good for like a high score chase, but it's a cool visual mechanic they do. Anyway, that's just my little thing on that. So this movie was kind of funded by Apple. We had to log into Apple TV Plus in order to watch it. And I kind of looked at the director and all this and that, and I would say for the most part, this was kind of like a sophomore effort by a lot of people. Our director, I forget his name. Maybe Devin, you can look it up for me. I have too many tabs open right now.
I forgot to open.
He's only done a few movies, none of which I heard before, and it's like once every 5 years he works on a movie. The writer, same kind of thing, did a couple television shows, I believe, and then that was it. There's a lot of producers on this film, but this feels like one of those like a lot of names attached for the sake of it.
John Say Baird, Baird. Hopefully I pronounced that right. He's done other movies. He's done is Filth. Director was for Filth. Stonehouse. He was director for 3 episodes of a TV series. Stan and Ollie. He was director on. Yeah, I'm just looking. I don't recognize any of these. And usually I'm pretty
little things.
Usually I'm pretty
that
good.
I've never heard of. So
doesn't mean they're not good, but
oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that at all. And I feel like we'll talk our opinions later. I don't think this was a badly made film or anything like that. So yeah, this was surprised to see like they didn't just like spend a lot of money and get like a Ron Howard, just this like a career director that's just. He comes in, does a job, and leaves. Like he saved a Star Wars movie, that type of stuff. Just to kind of make this quick, like dramatized, because documentary. So not a documentary, but like historical reenactment. I don't know what you would call this. I wouldn't call this a documentary. Or
I almost would say
biopic or anything.
I don't know how like accurate it is, but you could maybe argue it's a historical fiction in the sense I'm sure there's some stuff.
There's a couple things where I'm like, that didn't happen. And if they did, it was like not nearly to the extent. But for the most part, like,
historical fiction to me probably isn't even the right term. Yeah, definitely based on a true story movie. But yeah, not a biopic. I guess it is a biopic because it is about the main character there, Hank Rogers. Yeah, like kind of discovering Tetris and his goal to bring it, worldwide. By the way, Hank is played by Taron Egerton, who Ethan and I should know was Elton John in Rocket Man, which I did not know until right now.
Nice.
He's also been in Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
Didn't watch that.
You guys don't know this actor? He's like one of my favorite actors. I feel like because
I don't know.
I've watched like Kingsman and Rocket Man. I feel like he's been in a bunch of other stuff. He always plays British characters.
Legends. Eddie the Eagle.
I feel like he's like very famous actor. I'm really surprised. I feel like you guys are trolling me right now.
No, like I've definitely seen him before, but I'm looking at the list of movies he's been in, and the only one that I've seen for sure is
Rocket Man.
It was Rocket Man.
Wow.
I haven't seen any of the Kingsman ones.
Yeah, I didn't see those.
Very good.
See, they felt too.
Actually, no, I have seen a Kingsman.
So, like, I chose
Kingsman
not to
movie.
watch them out of spite.
I saw Argyle.
Okay.
But I didn't know it was a Kingsman thing until the end credits, and I'm like, oh, is this supposed to be that Kingsman thing? Yeah.
Oh my god.
Remember when there was like supposed to be that Kingsman movie during the pandemic, and then for like 5 years, that's all we saw was that freaking trailer.
Oh
yeah, it's coming out for real this time. It's about like there was like just one guy.
Yeah.
Kingsman.
Yeah,
the Kingsman.
They love to show the trailer with him like sticking the tube, like all the people in the room filling up with water, and they stick a tube like through a toilet to get air. I see that trailer. Like it's like an old movie. I still see it.
He's working on Kingsman: The Blue Blood, which I hope isn't a cop movie.
Oh my god, blood runs. Hey, once you just like any fascist kind of regime, once you get rid of those you've othered, you got to start othering yourselves now. That's your whole identity. So got to get those police to come in and beat your own citizens.
See, I actually recognize Toby Jones. Who plays what's his character's name? Robert Stein, from a bunch of
Oh,
stuff.
he's been a lot of Nazis in films.
Yeah, he has been a lot of Nazis. He was in the Hunger Games. He was in what's this one? Yeah, David Copperfield, couple episodes.
Is that the guy who created Tetris?
No, he was
No,
he was the little short, bald guy with glasses that
Oh,
first tried to get
yes,
the
yes.
rights.
He's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. That's the latest one. Where a
What?
Nazi.
He's also Captain
Oh, I
America
thought you were-
as a Nazi.
I thought you said he's Indiana Jones.
No,
I was like,
no.
that
That would
guy
be
plays
funny.
Indiana Jones.
Jurassic World, Zoo, The Snowman,
The Snowman.
Sherlock for one episode, Atomic Blonde he was in.
I never saw that.
Yeah, Hunger Game movies. That's probably what I'm thinking of.
He's a career
Captain
actor.
America: Winter Soldier was probably his big one that we know of. Because
He was a computer Nazi in that one because he was a Nazi in the
Yes.
first Captain America, and his
Yes.
brain is put in computer because comic books.
he was the voice
Um,
of Dobby. There you go. There's a interesting fact I
No.
would never have guessed. Yeah,
Hey,
he's Dobby.
speaking about Nazis and fascists, Harry Potter.
Oh my god.
That's all those books are. Is just fascist.
No, this
rhetoric.
cast is, I think, pretty good. They, I think, did a good job of. I feel like everyone.
I will say one thing before we get ahead. Speaking about casting, the guy that they had to briefly be Hiroshi Yamauchi, president of Nintendo at that time, looks just like him. It just looks like him. Like it just looks like him. I was like shocked.
Togo Ogawa is Hiroshi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got some stupid nerdy Nintendo factoids I'll throw out as we kind of talk about this movie a little bit. Stuff I can't just not say.
Not
get it,
say.
Nazi?
Not
Yeah.
There it
We're on the
is.
same page there. We're on the same page. We could even say we're in the same Reich together.
Oh my! stop.
No. We'll talk about global systems at the end of this episode. Don't worry, guys.
Oh yeah, don't worry for the
Um,
40-minute debate on the USSR, folks.
Oh,
don't
boy.
worry, it's coming up.
It's
boy.
just 15 minutes. Don't worry. Anyway, yes, this film was depicting the kind of discovery and the fornication of Tetris, globally at the very least. I found overall this movie to be very entertaining. I remember watching a trailer for this and being like, "Oh my god, like this, they're dramatizing this so much. It's like this KGB spy thriller type of thing." That's how the trailers were presenting it, at the very least. And I'm pretty sure they just showed a lot of footage from the very, very end of this film where it was very much like, yeah, they just wanted to do a car chase and they wanted this and that. Beside everything up to that point, I'm like, oh yeah, this is very entertaining. This is very good. This is respecting me a little bit as a consumer. There's some inaccuracies in some of the way they kind of show some of the video game stuff. This is very much not a film trying to show off to video game nerds or anything like that. This is very much for someone's parents, I guess, to be like, oh yeah, everyone knows Tetris, Pac-Man, Mario, Halo, maybe. Those are the games parents know. Tomb Raider
Dino
is another
Crisis.
one.
You're missing one
Sure.
there. Dino
Well,
Crisis.
And I don't know. There's not a Dino Crisis movie. Granted, there's not a
because they're
Pac-Man
afraid to mess it up. That's
movie. Right.
why.
Right. Exactly.
That's too perfect.
Hey,
It's too good.
it's one of those things where it's like, who are you gonna cast as Regina? Who are you gonna do it?
I don't know.
You can't. Too perfect of a woman. All right, an Uzi in each hand is all you need to take down a dinosaur.
It's true.
I feel like this movie wasn't necessarily made for the three of us, if that makes sense. Well, at least the super paying attention to video games and knows maybe Tetris, as actually played Tetris type of thing. So some of the way they tell about the history is like, wow, we're just kind of just gliding over this information, or maybe to describe this accurately would be too boring to maybe their target audience. But overall, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I wish I picked the movie. We'll talk about that later too. Devin, this was your pick, so why don't you go ahead and tell me, David, and the audience out here, what did you think overall?
No, I mean, going in, like I said, I was just generally interested. I do remember the trailers, and I think I was a little bit more high on the trailer than you were. I'm like, oh, that is not what I thought when I first hear of a Tetris movie. I was worried it was going to go into like a
Pixels.
Pixels situation, which I think
Yep.
Tetris is in that, if I remember correctly. I did see that movie,
I
unfortunately,
did not
in
see
theaters.
that movie.
Which I think we have to watch that at some point. You should have had that on the list.
Here's the
because
thing,
it is
Devin.
100% a video game movie.
It is not based off of a video game,
It is. It has multiple video games in it.
but it is not based off of a video game.
Neither
It's
was
a unique,
Monster Hunter.
original
Really.
story. It's based off Monster
Pixels?
Hunter.
Pixels is much more
What's the game?
favorite. It has Pac-Man in it. We just talked about him. You
So
have
it's- so it's a
Tetris, if I'm not
Pac-Man movie?
mistaken. I
It's a
think
Pac-Man
Pokemon
movie.
in it. It's a video game
Uh-oh.
movie.
Mom and Dad
Okay.
are fighting.
Ready Player One, here we come. Guess we better
Sure.
watch all
I haven't
fucking
seen
20
it.
million Pokemon movies because they're based off of an anime that's based off a video game. Devin, we made our list
Folks.
specifically just to make sure we watched video game movies based on a video game or a video game franchise. It's actually attempting to do it. We are not watching an Adam Sandler movie. No.
Fine, we're watching Click, and that's settled.
I watched that when I was like 8.
I did too. Yeah. No. Yeah. I went into it being like, okay, we'll see how this goes. I love Cold War shit. As a history major graduate at one point, Cold War was one of my favorite like eras of world history, just because of its kind of apocalyptic kind of energy. At least when I would read stuff about it, when it came to like nuclear weapons and any day the nukes can come falling down. And then you have things like the Cuban Missile Crisis kind of being like, oh shit, yeah, shit might actually fall down. This is it, folks. And then also just like how, that just era with, there's a lot of things have come out of that, whether it's a James Bond or a Mission Impossible, that kind of like spy thrillers a lot of that stuff has come out of the Cold War.
Best kinds of movies right there.
A lot of video games as well. Metal Gear Solid to me has always been kind of a Cold War inspired thing. I think that actually does take place in, if I remember, you know that more than me, Ethan.
The third game.
Yeah.
64. Yeah.
But yeah, like going in, I did not know this movie was rated R, so I was like, oh, there's a lot of F-bombs in this. There's a lot of swearing and whatnot, and this movie follows to me in a way that other video game movies haven't done before, where its pacing matches the play style of a game. I've never seen a video game movie that we've watched so far that matches it, I don't think, identically. Is that this game or this movie picks up like how a Tetris, when you have a fresh start in Tetris, which is starts off slow and all of a sudden the pieces are coming down quick, and then like the last 30 minutes is like just like I feel like a Tetris when you start getting further in Tetris. So I was like, I'm gonna give this movie props from like a pacing standpoint, that I'm like, it matches what the game feels like when I've played it, where it's like, oh yeah, I got this all day. Oh no, now it's going quicker, the music's speeding up, the pieces, there's more pieces falling down,
And then you fail the movie and it ends abruptly.
yeah, and then the movie
Right.
ends. But no, like I really like this movie. I think it's really well shot. Going from Gran Turismo to this, it felt like cool. We're keeping the same quality going, visual wise. And they had a lot more, just like more set pieces than I was expecting. I thought like it wasn't like there wasn't like that many like locations, but it did feel like they were in Russia. They were jumping from here to
They
there.
definitely, like, when they show you, Russian exterior shots, it's very much the color grading really wants to show you desolate, hungry, cold.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
just like concrete, brutal. I think it's called like brutal
Yeah,
architecture.
definitely brutalist for sure. Just
And as someone who's gone to,
rectangles.
I've never been to Russia, but I have gone to like Slovakia. I've gone to Bratislava, and to this day, it still has that kind of grayness to all its buildings. That whole former Eastern bloc there. But no, I really had a fun time watching this movie. I was worried at first because of just like the kind of, like I said, the pacing was a little slow, and I'm like, oh, weird, they're kind of like starting us off with Tetris already being a thing, and it's about this one guy kind of finding it, and I'm like, I don't know if I like this, but then it just kept going and going, and all of a sudden, like, there's, oh, this person was a KGB spy. Damn, that's crazy. And then like, oh, he's a shitty father too. Just like these kind of like subplots that are happening. I think were done very well. Yeah, I think this is a really good movie. Just movie, not just a video game movie. And I would recommend it to people who are looking for kind of like a drama, a comedic drama that takes place in the Cold War. I think that like
Interesting.
it's a really solid film. Yeah, I'm trying to save my more thoughts as we kind of dive deeper.
Alrighty, David, your
As more
thoughts.
pieces fall.
Yes,
Yeah,
the pieces need
as
to fall
more
one
pieces-
at a time.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of the same feelings as Devin, but begrudgingly because this is Devin's pick. I mean, great movie, really solid movie. I did not realize. I text you guys because I was like the 2023 one because I was like, there's no way we're like this looks like a professional movie. I thought we were watching like an anime or something. Like,
Hey,
so
look at the notes. I gave you a spreadsheet.
I know, but I was
It
like
said
in a
live
rush.
action.
I had limited time tonight, so I just like pulled it up and I was like, this like seems like another Gran Turismo, like you said. Really liked it. I love this main character actor, like I said.
Yeah, you just
He
love him
plays
so
a
much,
lot
don't
of
you love him so much.
yeah, just love him so much. He plays in Kingsman, another like that's like hardcore spy movie where this is more spy adjacent. Like KGB is
Spy
involved
themes.
basically just because they're in Russia and that's Russia. But
Trying to steal secrets.
yeah, I mean,
under the enemy's nose.
yeah, it's just really interesting. I did not know the story of Tetris beforehand, so it was really cool to learn that it was like a true story. Of course, it's dramatized, but just really interesting all around. Man, what else? Yeah, I mean, visually, like Devin said, really cool. I loved them going from Japan to Russia, and it really felt like dangerous for him to like be in Russia at that time, and just like seeing, or maybe I should say USSR, but seeing that like vibe difference immediately. But he's not like changing his sort of approach to selling the game. And you're kind of like, as he's doing that, you're like, oh, like, be careful. But I had a lot of fun watching this movie. It was a long movie, and honestly, the only reason I was stressed about it being long is because I was watching it right before we logged on here. Otherwise, I would not have known it was a 2-hour movie. I was totally in on it.
Actually,
Yeah,
you brought up the
runs
Soviet
at
stuff.
I was gonna say it runs at 1:58, which is lately has been a little bit above what we've been kind of watching. Well, I think Gran Turismo was 2 hours, but a lot of the video game movies are in that sweet spot of me and Ethan's sweet spot of like an hour 35. It's like I think
That's
they're
what I was
good.
expecting.
Yeah.
Unless it's
Yeah.
good, and then you're like, yeah, give me more.
Just briefly about the Soviet stuff, because you mentioned it. I kind of wanted to make note of, like, hey, they're visually describing, the Soviet Union at this era. And you have some people within them and maybe how they live. Obviously, they're showing, some poor lines and some, we've lived in an apartment building, type of stuff, like a very large complex. Same home his father lived in, the Tetris guy. But I wanted to pay attention to, like, the actual words they do say about it. Do they disparage it at all? And really the only thing I can think of is just kind of towards the end when Gorbachev himself says that greed is what ruined communism. The greed of people like our KGB dude, who's just the only reason everything's all fucked up in this story is because of him trying to find a paycheck and exit, this life. Just interesting that, like, they didn't really like want to press, because this is a Tetris. This is a movie about, finding Tetris. This isn't a movie about like analyzing a political system. Don't worry, we'll get to that later in this episode. So just to like see like that was the one thing there. I will just say, found it very funny that like they almost make it seem as if Tetris is this integral part of like this country's existence. Like, it's do or die. We are going to fall apart if we don't, get this back, type of thing.
Well, I think that
ways, it's just kind of funny.
I'm sure that was dramatized quite a bit, but
absolutely.
But at the same time, at that time period, both sides, I should say, were very much of, we got to fight at all costs to make sure we don't look like we're losing this. And you got to think of the Cold War as like almost like a PR war, rather than a like yeah, there was skirmishes that are being pushed by both sides. I think, what was this, 90, 89?
I think this was supposed to be 88.
Yeah.
The Game Boy itself launches in
84,
89.
maybe? Seeing
no,
IMDb 84. Global rights for Tetris in 1984, leading to tense negotiations in the Soviet Union. Maybe it started in 84, but then as it progressed. But that, like, during that time, yeah, like you have, I think the USSR was involved in Afghanistan in the 80s, or was just getting out of it. So like outside of those kind of things, there was still that PR of, you had the space race that kind of America won in the sense of, we got to the moon first. But at this time there is still that PR, and also around then is when Gorbachev is starting to become more open to world involvement in Pizza Hut's always the famous example. The joke is Pizza Hut took down the USSR because they allowed Pizza Hut in, that everything fell apart. But that's how the logic was for the Soviets, was that as soon as we let American capital or Western capital into our nation, then we're letting them influence us. I have my personal opinions on the USSR and why I don't think it's communism, but we can get into that later if you want. I do think this movie does a fair job of, I think, being both not like super critical, but just being kind of honest, is like, that's how they reacted. That is, you can't debate that. This is how they would have reacted 100%. I believe it 100%. And hey, we're not letting this thing that came from us that will be claimed by Japan, aka Western nations, and be sold as a profit, because the USSR functioned as the Soviets, the government being the main profiteers, as opposed to in capitalism, American capitalism specifically, companies getting the rights to that. The federal government more of a player of making sure no one's breaking the rules. And I feel like that is just a good way of showing that, I think, is, the state doesn't want this getting out because it's going to hurt. They want to claim it's them. If they're going to sell it, but they won't, but if they wanted to, they want to be the ones to have the power over. And that's what I think that power dynamic is shown in this movie, where there's one guy who's like, I just made this game for fun, one. And then you have his character is trying to just get a deal done because he put too much money behind it. Right. He's desperate.
Hank.
And then you have the Soviets who are like, no, like, we don't want this to get out because they're gonna profit off of something our people made. So I think those are the three big power dynamics in this film.
Yeah. Go on, David.
Devin's second part, I think, made me forget what I was going to say, but I was just agreeing with him in that. Oh, I remember. I think this movie, I mean, you guys can argue whether or not it is or not, but I think intentionally it was not supposed to be bashing communism. I think they did their best to make it seemed like, at least, like, hey, they probably talked to the actual guy, so maybe they got his input. I don't know, but it seemed like they were not. This was not a America propaganda machine.
Your classic American propaganda, where they're like, wow, look how evil these people
backwards
are.
they are.
Yeah.
I would say like
balanced.
it's a sympathetic light they put it in. Like it's the end times of the Soviet Union that these series
And people know it's coming to an
and
end.
like they're like I said like with the Gorbachev thing like yeah, he's talking about a transition away from some of this stuff and saying how it was ruined. Like the ideal is never really or like the kind of idea of communism or what they wanted is never really argued against. It's just the reality of what actually is, and they're sympathetic to, hey, this really sucks, and because they show some greed, as Gorbachev kind of said, is the reason, which you could argue is a capitalistic thing, and I guess technically it's saying that they're right. I don't know, but
Okay.
yeah, no, I'm with you,
That's
David.
a big jump.
Whatever. I'm with you there, David. On they weren't trying to like and again like it's not the point of this is a film is to interrogate that stuff.
Tetris is like, if you're like we talk about how it's kind of have spy themes. It's basically the package, right? It's getting the data or getting the package, getting the hostage out of a situation. That's kind of how I looked at this movie. Is that Tetris is just like this piece that everyone wants, and it's who's going to come out of it. How are you going to use either your allies or your lack of allies? How are you going to manipulate someone else to get it? Hank Rogers' character, we're talking about like how everyone's trying to get Tetris, get the prize, and they're doing whatever it takes. They're using other people to get to it. And I think what I think is what makes the story cool is that Hank Rogers, I think at first going in, was using people to get to it, but then he realized, no, I actually do really like this game and what this means, and I want to give Alexei Pechtonov, played by Nikita Efremov, that rhymes. I think at first he's trying to use him, but then realizes like, oh, this guy just made the game because he's just passionate about the game and wanted to make something for everybody, and he still, even at the end of the movie, didn't really seem like, yeah, he got the money and got out, but like at the end of the day, I feel like he really just genuinely wanted to make the game and just wanted to be safe. He didn't want to, be taken out like his father was.
Right.
But so I liked that kind of as Hank Rogers kind of progressed throughout the story. He went from kind of this douchebag who only cared about the money, and he was desperate for the money, so I get it. But I think that's kind of one theme of this movie is greed, and knowing even for him, he's at first trying to go, oh, I'm trying to get this big catch. If I can get Tetris, we'll be millionaires, and they kind of do end like that. So I don't know if that really hits home as much as being like, well, his greed did win, and he did get rich.
But I think it was
but humanizing people around him, I feel like he did it.
When it was more like, in my eyes, the little guy winning instead of this. Well, maybe I'll retract that a little bit, because it's the little guy winning, but the little guy is also attached to Nintendo. But
Yeah.
So I guess when I think about it, maybe not so much. But
they make an effort to make it seem like, oh well, Nintendo's a good company, and then
right.
they're like,
They
the other
are
guys, they're shady.
at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think they were trying to frame it at least, and who knows if this is true or not. But the other company, I forget, the Maxwells or whatever.
I think something. I forget their company, but
Mirrorsoft.
I mean, obviously, super shady. So it was like a easy bad guy,
My favorite is and you watch that, like the ending and all that stuff where they're like, oh yeah, Maxwell's son killed his dad, probably.
What?
Yeah,
I must have missed that
like
when I watched that.
What they were up to afterwards, like, yeah, it was like, oh yeah, dad died in mysterious circumstances, and the son was arrested, tied to that.
It was like manslaughter or something like that.
I thought it said he was arrested, tied to the charges of his father.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. I don't remember.
That's what I thought.
I'm second guessing. Well, you just watched it, so I guess I'll trust.
Second guessing.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, we'll have to rewatch.
Yeah, but we can kind of talk more about some stuff. I do want to just talk about some of this Nintendo stuff here. Yes, obviously the Game Boy launched for $90, and it came packed in with Tetris. And
that was a cool scene, by the way. I really liked that kind of. I wasn't. Like you were talking about earlier, how like it's not for the maybe us gamers, but I don't know. I really liked like the kind of reveal of like, oh shit, the Game Boy. I'm like, oh,
So this is what I want to
yeah,
talk
like-
about. When they reveal it to him, Howard Lincoln, by the way, is that Nintendo of America VP there. He is the guy that was essentially he was like the gate between whether or not we were going to get some games from Japan. Like, he would play it and decide whether or not Americans would like it. He's the reason why the game in America called Super Mario Brothers 2 is not the same game in Japan called Super Mario Brothers 2. How they're two different games. So he was very much like that guy. He really loved it. And just real funny to then to be like, oh yeah, that guy was in a car chase with the KGB. I think that ending was maybe a little bit dramatized, because I don't see this guy running in a parking lot. Like, I saw that, I kind of laughed. Yeah, so when they revealed the Game Boy to him, I did kind of laugh a little bit at a couple of things. Like, he talks about how impressive it is, and yes, while there was like some handheld video game amusements type stuff, it wasn't necessarily like, here's a screen that kind of is like a television in the sense of you're displaying video game graphics like how you would see on an NES on a television, sort of. You know, that stuff would have been impressive, especially if it's like a commercial product that they're trying to sell. But like the whole thing, here's the thing. Mini rant. The Game Boy, besides maybe the Nintendo Switch, is the smartest thing Nintendo's ever made. Like, probably their best device they've ever made. It was $90 because it was an extremely cheap thing to make. The Game Boy screen was like this pea soup green dot matrix thing because that was really cheap. You know, it's got 4 shades of green, essentially, is how it did it. It's a 160 by 144 resolution, so it's like just off of being a square. And like, yeah, like the CPU that it ran on, this processor, was an Intel 8080, which was over a decade old when the time the Game Boy came out. So it was really cheap for them to make. And so that was obviously also why they're able to have the thing on a couple batteries run for like, 20 hours when their competitors ran for like 4 hours with more batteries, But the smartest thing about the Game Boy, this is kind of gets into what they show there. Not quite, but I'm going to take it. He goes like, oh, like he sees Super Mario Land on the Game Boy. He's like, oh, is this running in C? The guy, says yes, and then he kind of plugs in his computer and gets Tetris to working on it. Yeah, it would have taken a lot more time and yada, yada, yada. The compatibility, just because it's running in the same programming language, doesn't mean shit. Like, in nowadays, our computers run on the same type of architecture, so yes, you can get that to work pretty easily. But all these things had their own unique aspects to them. You would have needed to have spent time learning this microprocessor in order to port your thing over to it. But the thing about the Intel 8080 that the Game Boy ran on was that because it was over a decade old and was like the most popular thing in scientific calculators and microprocessing computers, was that there was thousands of people that already knew how it worked. Like, you got kids in college that bought a scientific calculator to do programming on, and as soon as they graduate, they already know how to make a Game Boy game. Was like pretty powerful. It's probably the smartest thing Nintendo's ever done. So when they do reveal that to him, like, the machine itself is not that impressive on the hardware spec, but it was just like, hey, anyone is going to be able to make games extremely cheaply and quickly. It's kind of like how companies like to use Unreal Engine to make their games on, because there are hundreds of thousands of people that already know how to use that engine, that they can just hire people. Same thing for like Game Boy. A company could be like, oh yeah, like we could just hire a couple guys. They already know how to make a game on this system that can spend a day and they're already experts, type of thing. So when they do that, when they saw that, like, yeah, I was kind of like nerding out a little bit of like, ooh, how are they going to frame this? It was a little bit simplistic on that whole thing. But it was still kind of cool to see it all.
It made the scene more exciting if you kind of just like reveal it, because even if you're younger than us and maybe don't know what the Game Boy is, I mean, it's crazy to say that there's people out there who might not know what the Game Boy is, that like, they'll be like, oh, like once they say what it is, I think that's pretty cool. I don't know, I also just love old shit like that, like 80s and 90s analog-y kind of looking, and the Game Boy has that aesthetic to it, you know.
Also,
then
like the cartridge has the ribbon cable coming out of it because it's not like it's a prototype, you know, so it's plugged into a computer, you know.
Because I was like, what is this gonna be? Because like 80s isn't, like, in terms of video game stuff, isn't my strong suit by any means. So I was just like, oh, what could it be? I'm like,
I knew
once
already.
He took it off, I was like, oh, Game Boy, hell yeah. So
yeah.
I always forget that it's that old too. Like, I think that's the
89.
crazy thing is.
Well, what's the other thing too?
I had the Game Boy Color when I was.
That came out a decade after the Game Boy. That machine had like a decade on the market with like, there was the Game Boy Pocket, which was like, instead of a dot matrix display, it was more of an LCD, and you can actually adjust the contrast. So instead of green monotone, it was actual black, you know, to white, so to speak. But yeah, it was the Game Boy Color was like a decade later, and it was only like a small spec bump. People kind of consider it like a PlayStation 4 Pro type of thing. They don't really consider its own console. But yeah, the thing where he says, you know, to Howard Lincoln there, you know, if you want to sell, you know, thousands of Game Boys to young children, package, you know, Mario. But if you want to sell millions to everyone around the world, you package Tetris. That is a real quote. That is like the famous.
You put Candy Crush in it.
You put it. Honest to God.
I mean, same
Candy
kind
Crush.
of thing.
Candy Crush is our
idea.
generation's Tetris.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
Same
really
idea.
similar.
Bryn is on like level like. She says she gets test levels now. That's how good she is at
Tesla
Candy
levels?
Crush.
Not public
she gets
yet?
test levels, that aren't public yet. I'm like, you're more of a gamer than me. I don't even like. I'm not even joking.
Hey, she
Skill-wise,
could
at
join
least.
the force and be a cop. That's all they do.
I know. That's right.
Like Candy Crush.
At least
See,
in New York
David's
City.
not on Twitter enough.
I don't
David's
like-
not on Twitter
At least
enough.
in
He
New
doesn't
York
know
City.
all the
I don't
names.
go on
God,
Twitter.
there's so many photos, David, just of like cops in the subway in New York City just leaning up against a wall on their phone playing Candy Crush instead of like, I don't know. I know Jerry Seinfeld's not in a good light now, but he had a good line of like, "What are you doing? Grab a broom. Let's do something."
What are you doing? Grab a broom.
If you got time to lean, you got time to clean. You're a public servant.
That's pretty good.
But
They're playing Candy Crush out
anyway,
there, folks.
the Game Boy stuff was cool that they showed that off. And one more little thing. So before the Game Boy was shown in the film, he's talking to Hiroshi Yamauchi, being like, "Hey, turns out they lied to me about the arcade rights. They actually sold it to Sega, which is Nintendo's biggest competitor at the time."
Shout out to Sega.
Yeah, that's right. We're a Sonic podcast. You see this to the left of Devin and the right of me and above David? That's the Sega font for our kind of logo, so to speak. And Yamauchi's like, I want you to go, go to Redmond, Washington, and go talk to some of my guys there. They'll show you something interesting. He kind of meets Yamauchi. He shows him Tetris and please give it a try. And he just happens to have a cartridge that will work on the Famicom or whatever there. Again, that's kind of... So that part, I don't know how much of that is true. I will say, Hiroshi Yamauchi famously hated video games. Never played any. Never touched a single video game besides the one time late in his life where his guys were like, "You love the game Go. Here's a Go video game. I think it was for the Game Boy. Play it. We're excited about it." And he played it and was disappointed in how easy it was and called it garbage. That's the only time he's ever played a video game, reportedly. So I highly doubt he played Tetris and was excited. However, the thing about Hiroshi Yamauchi, was that even though he inherited the company from his grandfather, not from his father. His father was kind of banished from the family because he ran away. He just left. His son was 5 years old, and he said, "See ya." So his grandfather gave, Hiroshi Yamauchi the company. And it was a toy company before video games. So he inherited it when it was
video
toys.
games are toys, too.
Right.
So.
So he never liked video games, but, he saw that it was something to some people. And so he was smart enough to know that it was, obviously the way forward for their company. But he's also the guy that, basically knew how to find the right people. He found Shigeru Miyamoto. He found Gunpei Yokoi, who's the guy who created the Game Boy. He found
Hideo
all these
Kojima.
people. The guy who would replace him, not his son, his grandson, or anything like that. He found a programmer, fresh out of college, who started working for a company that Nintendo was working with. This guy is named Satoru Iwata. That guy came and saved Nintendo's ass a couple times. Satoru Iwata is the reason why Pokemon came to America as early as it did, because he fixed the code. It was too full of bugs, errors, and the fact that Japanese is too condensed a language. You try filling out a Pokédex in English, you're filling up your cartridge's memory, you know? So that guy ended up replacing Yamauchi. Like, he was his successor. So, like, that guy, he hated video games, but I do believe the idea of him seeing Hank, seeing Tetris, and being like, I actually think you have something, but I don't believe that he actually played it. I think he would have scoffed at the idea of actually playing a video game.
Why don't you ask him?
I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if he's alive. No, so
go knock on his door.
Yeah. But he was the guy who's like, oh, the Famicom in Japan, which is the NES over there, is purple, like a maroonish purple and gold, because those were the colors of his scarf he liked. Like, he's that guy who's like, I just like it like this.
I mean, those are two great colors, you know.
Yeah,
you should make a football team with them.
All right, Ethan's nerdy Nintendo stuff over. We put that all beside us. Let's talk about Tetris itself. We go back and forth between, like, Japan, United States, well, at least, you know, like, Washington.
I want to say my one critique of this movie is I feel like
USSR.
they do the animation of flying just a little bit too much. Like, I get they're trying to do the Indiana Jones thing of like, oh, they're there. And I get, like, but I think they could have at some points, like, just cut straight to the USSR. Like, just, I think that would have been fine. I think the audience...
They gave it a visual identity. We know what it looks like, for sure.
But maybe they are like, we really want to get, like, more video game graphic-y looking 8-bit shit in there. So, like, I think it's fine. Whatever. I think it's fine. So, like, I can see why maybe they wanted to do it. You know, but I think they could have maybe just cut a couple of those out and just jumped straight to it, because I think they did at other points, but for some reason I feel like there was moments where I'm like, okay, there's too much jumping around. It's like when you add too many transitions to a scene, it can feel a little choppy.
It almost
that was
feels
my one
more
critique
chaotic
with
than it
the
actually
with the traveling stuff. But no, yeah, I did still like all, like, the places they went to, 'cause I think they went to even San Francisco at one point, or
Vegas
LA.
was where CES always is, so it opens in Vegas.
Yeah, or it started in Vegas. Yeah, I think they went there for Nintendo of America. I think was in
Washington.
I thought they went to California at some point. I don't remember for what. But yeah, I did generally still like when they showed it. I was just like, okay, don't have to do it every time either. It felt like it. Right. That's my one big critique of not many. So.
Yeah, we talked a lot about our overall thoughts, and then we kind of delved deeper into them. I
didn't want to talk about one scene though. I thought was cool talking about cinematography.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
So Hank Rogers, I think towards the end of the movie, is kind of talking to, I forget the guy's name offhand. I think it was Oleg Stefan's character, Nikolai Belikov, as Oleg Shtefenko. He's the one, like, guy who at first you see me, he's like, oh, he doesn't speak English, but then he does speak English, and he actually does want to give the rights to Hank. You know, he sees it as the actual best deal and the best hope for the game, and he wants the game to go out there.
And it's a lot of money he's bringing into his country, which he sees as a good thing.
Yeah, like, he still has that kind of hope, I guess, for the sense of the country doing well. Maybe he sees that the system around him isn't really working, but he still, like, has hope for the country. But anyways, there's, like, one scene towards the end when they're kind of talking, and it's kind of Hank's kind of doing a monologue, and I think it's on purpose, but not in the, like, don't take it too literally, but as showing as Hank kind of like an inspirational, like, speaker almost to everyone in the room. They have Lenin behind him, like the painting in the direction of Lenin, like, pointing, and he's kind of like talking towards everyone in the same direction. I just thought that was a cool,
what is a salesman
touch.
But a politician of capitalism?
I just see it as more of a way, just it's like, hey, he's trying to help them get the change that they want. Like he's trying to sell them this game. He's trying to look what's best for them. But also just like he's speaking in a way that is, I think in that moment for those people as powerful as Lenin was for people of his time. So I just thought that was cool. But I think that was the one big one that I noticed. I'm like, oh, I like that. Kind of
I loved
subtlety.
all of the quick like cuts we had between like while they were negotiating, and like we got guys in the other
Keeps
room
cutting,
and no one knows
running
who's
down in
there.
the hall.
Yeah, just trying to get the best deal, and yeah, just some clever stuff. One part about this that obviously is integral to the whole negotiation and the kind of the fate of this movie, so to speak, is the delineation between the different rights and how handheld rights is different from video game rights. You know what I mean? Like video rights being like a home computer, system hooked up to a monitor versus a standalone device that has a screen. You know what I mean? Is not plugged into a wall. Is somehow different nowadays. Obviously, that wouldn't be the case. It's a video game.
Dude, I wonder if
Almost
today,
even the same
if,
as
like,
computer in a sense.
Does mobile count as handheld? Now, like if
I guess it depends.
I wonder if people are bartering that now. Like, let's say you're an indie developer and you're trying to get your game on Switch, but then maybe mobile. Is that two separate? You know what I mean? Contracts,
I will say yes
technically?
to this. So Apple Arcade is Apple's like subscription stupid thing, whatever. There's a Sonic Dream Team. We got to play it for the show at some point, at least to talk about it. Whatever. Any game. So basically, Apple funds. They pay a lot of money for that. When you're on Apple Arcade, you cannot be a part of another subscription. So subscription rights are another thing as well, and you cannot be on You can't be on Android. Essentially, it's not another mobile thing, but you can sell it on the Switch or the PlayStation or the Xbox or Steam. So like, yeah, there are some that do that. Of like, mobile is considered different from video games, but like, the Switch isn't in its own category from PlayStation or Xbox. Like,
But I guess in that vein, I mean, I couldn't just code a Mario game, call it a Mario game, and then sell it on the Apple Store.
Well, no, that's
following
copyright.
your rules,
Nintendo would own that.
But I think, right, but isn't that
We're
kind
talking
of
about
what
licensing alpha thing, where it's like, oh, like they're selling the license for Tetris for arcade, for video, like the home console, handheld, and computer. Because initially it was computer.
Gotcha.
And that kind of seemed to encompass everything because they didn't specify what do you mean by computer. So it's not necessarily like the game itself. It is the license for it and the rights for that. But like the copyright of Tetris still is owned by the licensor, and the licensee being Hank and Nintendo in that sense, and then Microsoft wanting to as well. That's to be different from copyright. But I did find all that stuff. I was not expecting a rights battle to be interesting to me, in that sense. And I think that's find always the way they did
like
it
these
was
kind
interesting.
I feel like it's like the hardest thing with like drama films. I'm gonna keep calling this movie more of a drama with spy elements, thriller elements.
That's true.
I think that's always the hard part with dramas is like dramas can be bad because usually it's like people talking in a room or the relationships between people. I think people always point fun of like soap operas for being over the top, but they do that because it's hard to make just people standing in a room sometimes talking and having debate or comedy, whatever it is, can be hard to write. So that's why I think, not saying soap operas aren't easy to write either, but I think there's an element to it, like that recipe works because they can get away with being like, people know what a soap opera is in terms of a type of drama where, the main character got in a car accident and now the baby mama is sad and, will there be a divorce? Like they can just up over the top and it's entertaining.
I thought you were dead.
When movies like I'm trying to think of movies that we all seen, like Hateful Eight with Quentin Tarantino's movie, which takes place mostly in one cabin in the middle of nowhere, and how he's able to kind of make it interesting, right? Because it could easily be boring, where it's like, okay, these guys are just talking. Like, I know, like, so I feel like this movie has an element of that, where making those negotiation scenes with the use of quick editing and he's walking to this hall and talking to this guy and like, but the actors sell it too, and they gotta give credit to the actors for bringing the energy of like, hey, this guy's stressed. This guy thinks he already has in the bag and he's just getting impatient, you know. And the other guy feels like he's not even in the conversation. All of a sudden he's just told, I'll take your deal out of nowhere, you know. So I think it's just like knowing how to put the scene together and the dialogue together in a good way. It's definitely an art that this is why I like movies, because it's a scene like this could easily be really boring, or these combination of scenes could be really boring, but they do a good job of making it entertaining. It's probably the best part of the movie is the back and forth in the first time we get those negotiations between the three of them.
So I think the reason is because there's like a pause in between each buildup, and what you were saying, like soap opera, like there's this buildup, and then they're like, oh well, this other thing needs to happen. We'll just build up more, and we'll build up, and then it like gets to this point where, as the viewer, you're like, well, this is like not realistic. Where this movie, like there's buildup, and then there's like a scene where he's walking, and there's like a cool down period, and then you're like, oh shit, like what's about to happen, and now you build up and then cool down. So I think
as a
just
as
like
an
what
audience,
you said,
and as an audience member, they're Nikolai there, the guy who's going to all the rooms for the Russian company, you know, like we don't know what he's thinking, and that's, I think they don't show him like communicating with anyone else really too much, because they want you to be like, okay, why does he keep going to these other rooms? You're as confused as Hank is, even though we do get a little bit more than Hank does, but like we're kind of with him the whole time of like, okay, what decision is he going to make? And then we get more of Nikolai's like leanings when the KGB get involved, and that's where like the more spy and like espionage power play is being done by them, being like, nope, you're gonna pick this decision. And then you're like, oh, is it because the state wants it? And it's like, well, no, actually this guy knows, you know, Russia's gonna fall, and he's trying to get it out with as much money as possible. And then the other KGB people who are around him don't even know it's happening, and they're trying to actually do their duty that they were given. They're actually trying to help the state. So it's just, they need they did a good job of like not like showing too much happening at the same time. You know, that's why movies like, or shows like Game of Thrones were so well done, when they didn't make the scope they showed the scope they needed to show at that moment and never made it broader until they like felt like they could. I feel like until everything's established. And they did the same thing here, where like you only know of Nikolai mostly, and then the one KGB guy, but then you don't realize that KGB guy is doing more around even the KGB's back. They kind of break down those relationships as the movie unfolds. Once again, that's what makes dramas really hard to make, because it's like having the right consistency and knowing when to show those relationships changing or people doing certain actions.
I did like, on that note too, when we get to Mirasoft senior guy, Maxwell Senior, when he finally does, because he's always like, I'm friends with Gorbachev, and you're like, yeah, fucking right, buddy. Yeah, everyone is, sure. And he does actually, they do end up meeting with him, and like, I was actually kind of surprised that like how successful sounding he was at the idea of like, no, we're going to get the Tetris rights for no money, because this is an exchange of ideas, an exchange of culture. We're giving you the rights to our books. You're going to give us the rights to Tetris. This is because obviously an exchange of money would be capitalism, and this is not what we're all about here behind this iron curtain, so to speak. You know what I mean? I was actually like, man, this guy, what's this guy's like angle? Because they don't have the money, and he can't just like, oh, he just literally wants it for free. That's his goal the whole time. And maybe if he was a year or two earlier, he could have, you know, maybe gotten it that way. Yeah. In conclusion, movies are a cool thing. No, but in all seriousness, any final things you guys have to talk about before we kind of talk about ranking it?
I was just gonna say that car chase we briefly talked about. I just want to point to it that I was unexpected from that. Even though I watched the trailer, I don't remember it being in the trailer really.
I feel like it was designed for a trailer. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Really?
I liked it because I feel like it just, like I said, the pacing of this film matches the game, where it's just like, how can we up the ante besides them kind of like, okay, he's hiding, or they're running away, or they're the plane hopping, you know, these guys are traveling here, they do this and do this. They're like, okay, let's just have an actual like, car chase of them trying to get to the airport. Also, I just think it's funny to see an airport like that. God, I wish airports still were like that. I could save a lot of time and not be waiting
right
45 minutes in security. But yeah, and then people smoking cigarettes and stuff on the plane. It's just funny to me.
That was fun.
Oh yeah.
But I did like the kind of thing at the end, even though it was, once I was kind of predictable. I'm like, oh, they're gonna be on a different plane because it'd be too easy for them to they just picked the quickest plane. They did the subtle thing where he's like, just give us what plane is boarding like right now. Let's just get on it, But it still made like it just very entertaining. Like, blah, 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 blah. It's a police chase. They're trying to get the package, right? Trying to get he has the piece of paper that says that they get it. And then they get on the plane, and then I thought it was, wasn't expecting though at the end of what's his name getting caught with him trying to basically do treason or whatever and they catch him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the whole last set piece I thought was cool, and it just echoed more of like, yep, this is the USSR, and then they had the whole parade or whatever for, I forget what day it was. I think it was, I want to say it was the day where they got independence, but I forget, there was like a name for it, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, I thought that whole, like I said, as a history person, I'm like, hell yeah, like that's my shit.
A display of power, the tanks.
Yeah.
We forgot to quickly, sorry to cut you off, David. I was kind of confused as like they're trying to do this like personal angle with Hank, where like, oh, he keeps making promises to his daughter, and then he ultimately doesn't come through. But like you're like, you immediately justify it because like, no, actually this is extremely important for the livelihood, and he could just not frame it in such a way where it sounds like he's just not paying attention to his daughter. But hey, she's the current CEO of the Tetris company, in this current day. So like, yes, I'm sure like they wanted to have that father-daughter bond be shown on screen, because it is what has happened in real
Still
life.
pretty shitty of him to say he'd be there though and then not be there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like I think they had to show that like he's sacrificing.
Communicated.
He's
better.
sacrificing a lot, and he's not a perfect guy either. Like I mean, he's a sales guy too. I think sales guys they follow the money, and
Right.
but like I said, I feel like they humanized him a little bit more towards the second half of the movie when how he humanizes the people around him, being like, oh no, like there's a lot at stake for them as well. It isn't just me. Like, yeah, I might lose my house and stuff, but some of these people might die.
There's a moment too.
You're not
talking
careful
about like using others in that, where like he's talking to God, I forget the character's name. The guy who made Tetris, and like, oh, like I can.
Alexei
Alexei, that's right.
Pashtunov.
Save my family, like our house, and blah blah blah. And it almost like dawns on him that he needs to say like, oh yeah, and we'll get you, we'll figure out how much we're gonna give you too, like almost like an afterthought of like, yeah, like I know I said I was gonna like get this guy what he's owed, but I didn't even put any thought into what that would even be. Like I don't even have a number in mind, like, but they kind of gloss over that a little bit. David, anything left that you feel like you have a burning desire to say? Pieces are getting close to the top of the screen, David. You better make a move.
I also really enjoyed the car scene. Honestly, I enjoyed that car chase scene a lot more than I enjoyed the car chase scene in Gran Turismo. I don't know why, but it just seemed...
You like the old-timey cars. You're like, hey, I love them too. I love a good 80s.
It felt more realistic on like how they got away. Like I think in Gran Turismo, he was just faster and he got away, which just, it felt less realistic than like, oh, I'm like squeezing our cars a little bit smaller, which is also like, it's kind of cheesy in the end, but it felt good. Yeah, and I think airport-wise, like Devin said, like a cliche, but
I will say that
I'll be honest, I didn't think about it until he opened the door, because I knew obviously he was going to get away. This didn't seem like a movie where he was not going to get away. Like obviously we have Tetris, so something.
What if it ended and it was like actually alternate history, like there's just no Tetris?
Yeah. But when like he banged on the door, I was like, oh, that was it. Like he didn't make it to the right plane in time. Then they opened the door. I was like, oh shit! Like, how are they gonna get out of this one? And I was like, oh, it's a different plane. So I did.
He says
kind
to
of
the
like that.
just him saying to the plane clerk there or whatever,
Yeah.
just being like, "What's the quickest plane out of here?" I'm like, "Oh, it's not gonna be," because they went to the
Yeah.
plane that's going to Japan or whatever, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't
and then
pick
I
up
guess
on that. I thought they were just going to the United States because that's where like 2 out of the 4 of them live. So like,
That's
oh yeah,
what I
we dropped the
figured as
Nintendo
well.
of America guys off first, and then. But that
Yeah,
does
that's
make
what
sense if you picked up on that. Also, like, I will say one thing I didn't know about this whole story before watching the movie is I didn't know like the guy who had invented Tetris. You know, I didn't know anything about Alexei. So like,
yeah.
he could have been dead as far as I knew in real life.
Yeah.
So like, I thought that was a possibility. It would have been
For sure.
a little weird if like they had to like dramatize like him. You can easily see like just take it as he's bleeding out and stuff. I don't know, but it didn't happen.
take it. It's just the Game Boy cartridge, like somehow already made.
Exactly. Well, folks, here on the Sonic Movie Show, we do what you just witnessed. We talk over each other a little bit, and then attempt to review a video game movie. We're getting better and learning as we go. Most of that's on my fault, but yeah. And at the end of our kind of review discussion, we kind of put it into a tier list in a kind of a ranking kind of fashion. So above our heads right now, you see the entire Sonic Movie Show Season 5 movie review plan, going left to right, top to bottom. We already did 2 of these movies. We did a movie I picked, a movie David picked, and Tetris is Devin's first movie. Yes, we are getting points for all these. You can see the points right above our heads. There's a decimal system. We'll explain that kind of towards the end of this segment. And yeah, we are giving it a letter grade from S through F. So S, A, B, C, D, E, and F. And kind of briefly, I like to pick on Devin here. Devin, in like 3 minutes or less, can you describe all of our movie tiers?
So S tier, if you watch your last episode, is Gran Turismo, or movies like Detective Pikachu, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And what do these movies have in common? Either it can be a combination of maybe it's just a well-shot movie. It looks good, feels good, vibes are good. Also, does it, faithfully to some degree either take something from the game it's based on, or maybe it's a straight faithful adaptation, or it has a combination that makes it a little bit better than A tier, which are still really good movies. It has that special sauce. Sometimes it's just you just know it when you watch it. You're like, yep, I have really no critiques. Maybe if I have any critiques, they're not big ones. When A tier movies are still like, we still highly recommend these movies like Mortal Kombat 2021. We have Sonic the Hedgehog, the first Sonic movie there, where really, really good movies. Maybe there's just missing a little bit something to get to the S tier. Like I said, that special sauce. S for special sauce. We have B, which is still good movies. What missing them from like A tier is maybe we had some gripes with it that we think weigh a little bit more than maybe if an A and S tier movie. Maybe, it had a great second half, and that's what got it to be. Sometimes you get out of C tier because you had a great second half. In our Chronicles of Diesel reviews that we've done, I think, what is it? Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name now. With the bugs. Riddick, the first one. Pitch Black is the name of it. Yeah, Pitch Black. We're like, oh, the first half's but the second half's great, and that's what got to a higher tier. But yeah, there's like some really good movies in this. Some of these movies also are kind of, maybe me and Ethan ranked a lot of these where we're like, oh, these kind of are cult classics and are actually pretty good and are timeless. Like Mortal Kombat, the 1995 film. Wow. Where it's maybe not a great movie, but there's just something about it. It's just the definition of fun. So it's in B tier. We also have Silent Hill in there. The first Resident Evil movie's in there. Then we have C tier, which is a vast majority of our movies, unfortunately, which is just painfully average most of the time. Maybe there's some good elements. Maybe they are well made, but it's just kind of Or so there's some entertaining parts, but a lot of it's just not hitting hitting it for us. So we have Angry Birds in there. We have the Lara Croft Tomb Raider movies with Angelina Jolie, which have great action sequences, are pretty well shot, but maybe it's just like the plot isn't hitting, you know. I remember the movie kind of being like goofy at moments when it felt like it was trying to be serious. We have a lot of the Resident Evil movies in there because, once again, well shot, but they're kind of just deciding every movie there's a new plot line, new characters sometimes, straight up. They're like, oh, remember those guys? They're dead now.
Right.
Then you have, you know, some sequels in there, some animated movies like Street Fighter 2. Then we get to D tier, which is our bad tier. A lot of it's bad. Maybe there's some good stuff, but most of it's bad or boring. You know, am I checking my phone a lot throughout this movie? You know, that's not to take notes, but just like I don't care what's happening on screen. You have Assassin's Creed, which is my go-to D tier film because it was well like shot, but just so boring. And what was it talking about? Who cares? You know, you have Hitman, where I don't really remember what happened in that movie. Besides, there's a bald guy with a gun.
Thing.
I think there's a scene where they're on a train.
Yep.
Then Warcraft, which was like visually wow, but then I can't name one character. What happened first? What happened last? There's a sorcerer, I think. Just very forgettable. Then we have E tier, which is just bad to the bad. Don't watch these. Definitely don't watch these. Don't spend money on these. Don't try to watch these in other ways. Just skip these. Don't recommend it. Blood Rain, very, very bad. Meatloaf's the best actor in that movie. Rest in peace, my king. Monster Hunter, which, once again, it just... I shouldn't say once again. Monster Hunter is one of the few examples where it just didn't feel like it took from the source material at all. It just was by name. Could have been named as something else, and maybe would have been a higher tier because at least it wasn't misleading.
And
Mortal
the designs
Kombat
of the monsters, and otherwise it would have been a ripoff. You know.
Yeah. Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which was like, oh boy, this isn't even fun anymore. King of Fighters, oh boy, that just stunk. And then we have our special tier for movies that we find offensive and then are just so bad, never should have been made. I feel bad for everyone involved, except for Uwe Boll. That's Postal is an F tier. I hope to never have an F tier movie ever again because I don't want it.
I agree with you completely. And when we say offensive, we actually mean like this is offensive to watch. Like, why are we watching this? But yes, we've watched 2 films so far. Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. We gave a C. That was a pick that I made. And then the last film we watched was Gran Turismo, another film from 2023, which was a David pick, and we gave that the
true story
S tier. So your backwards S on camera looks great, David. Devin's is correct. I'm interested to see where we're going to put Tetris. Devin, this was your pick. You get to make your case first.
Well, if people remember the video game movie draft episode 201, I believe, or 202, I think it was 201. 201. We talked about, like, you know, after we did the draft, like, oh, what was our rankings? And I had Gran Turismo as my first potential pick and then Tetris, but I really had them kind of like neck and neck. I just kind of went with, I think our collective group would like Gran Turismo more. I think the chances, you know, were there. It was like the guarantee, like, to me, it was like, we talk about video game movie draft, almost like a fantasy football draft where it's like, you know who's number one. You know who's going to get the points. You had Gran Turismo up there, and I was pretty confident with Tetris. Not as confident as Gran Turismo would have been, but when I was looking at our list that we can choose from, like, from the trailer, it looks like it's well made. Apple productions that I've seen are usually at least, you know, decent movies. Maybe not all of them are like, wow, blew me away, but just like, these are decent movies. They don't put out bad products like compared to like Netflix, where there is some stinkers that they make. Like out of the streaming services that I feel like when Apple does stuff, I've liked a lot of it. So I was like, okay, can't be too bad. And from what my knowledge is from the trailer, it's like, oh, it's about the making of the game. It's a little different than our other ones. So with all that in mind, I had going in with pretty like decently high expectations. My first pick, I gotta get, to me, at least like a B out of this, because last year that's what did me in was I didn't score big. Like? But yeah, going in, I had high expectations, and I think it hit it for me. Where I was, pleasantly surprised by how good this movie is and how entertaining it was. And I think there's a debate to be had. Like, is this better than even Gran Turismo? I don't know. Both are, I think, do a good job of what genre of film that they're in, with Gran Turismo doing a very good job of being a racing slash kind of biopic film, when this is a drama that is a spy thriller almost element to it. And it even has action in it too, to a certain degree, during like the car chase scene and knowing when to have that. Yeah, I mean, for me, this is having the same feeling I have with Gran Turismo. I think this is S tier, which I'm happy, because I think we need more S tier movies, because it's a small group right now. I think it's got to be S tier because even our conversation that we're having, there's really not big gripes that we have. Gran Turismo is similar. If anything, I think we had more gripes with Gran Turismo at moments, but I don't know. I think this is just a well-made movie, not even just a video game movie. And usually when we talk about that, that goes in S tier, if not at least A tier. But I think this is S tier. I think it goes to the super category, because it's just
super.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think S is
compared to a lot of
for
movies,
special, but
super.
I don't know, Devin. You're saying an S tier, but all throughout this episode, the way you describe your opinions on this film is almost as if you wanted to give it the F tier. I feel like no, I'm just kidding. David,
news.
why don't you go next and tell us your pitch?
I mean, I will be surprised if we. Oh, wow, Jen is also in the episode. So I think I'll be surprised if we don't all give it an S, because I feel like I liked it more than Gran Turismo, and I'm a car boy. But I'm also a fan of spy movies, and I mean it's hard for me not to enjoy a movie and have the KGB in it, and just like thwarting the KGB and me not enjoy it. So I mean, it was just a good movie all around. I had gripes about the beginning of Gran Turismo, and we gave that an S, and I liked this whole movie. So
interesting.
I think it's an easy S for me.
Interesting. I straight up, I'm just gonna say right now, A was what I'm going with. I understand, obviously, we have a bit of a majority rule. I liked Gran Turismo more than this. For me, well, for us, for the definitions of these tiers, S has that bit of something special to it. They are almost equivalent to A-rank films in terms of like the movie itself. Like, very well made movie, a lot to like here. Your gripes can be small, almost nitpicky, and that doesn't really detract from it. But an S tier film is something that really has something special going on, and I don't know if it was just like the combination of actors with David Arbor and Orlando Bloom in Gran Turismo, or just like the fact that it maybe appealed to me more as a racing film. But that was an S easily for me. This one, I don't see the same thing, and you might say, oh, wow, Ethan, you're a Nintendo nerd, and the Tetris and the Game Boy and all this.
Yeah.
You would obviously... it didn't hit with me as a special thing. It was just a very, very well-made movie that told a story entertainingly. That's why I'm going to go with A. But you guys are very adamant on S, and I'm not going to attempt to budge you guys down.
Can I ask you, are you grading it on a curve? Because I feel like
Yes.
I could understand your A for a non-video game movie, but I mean, I feel like a video game movie, I mean, this is, I can't see too many movies doing better than this.
I'll put it this way. Other S-tier films we have include Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And for the most part,
So biased,
that
you know?
was
So biased.
yes, that was a film that had just intense, like, yeah, awesome, like things I want from that video game aspect being represented in the film. And that was not a movie that's based off of a specific video game. It was based off a franchise idea, the character, really, if anything. Similarly with this film, and I guess Gran Turismo, it's not based off a particular video game or even the franchise. It's like the idea of that brand, and this is telling, an origin story, video game origins, Tetris, you know what I mean? That's the full name. So, like, we have elements of, this kind of story that are being kind of played out, and I don't know. I don't see this. It's missing something special to me. Now, A is a lot better than Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. So I don't need to be interrogated here on that, because I can easily say that was the best goddamn movie of all time. I am going to go with you guys, and collectively we will definitely give this an S tier, but
You will go S tier, okay?
Something.
Well, if you don't go S tier, we will come back later tonight.
S for Stalin.
We will knock on door, and it won't be more than one knock.
I think I understand where you're coming from, though, because it's like, it's not really about Tetris. It's not like the video game is like the product placement in this movie. So I kind of understand where you're coming from, where like Gran Turismo was about this kid played Gran Turismo so much that he like actually raced cars. So I think I understand where you're coming from, but I don't know that it's enough to change my S tier.
Yeah, for me, like when I go with S tier, like I don't always add a requirement that it needs to be like super faithful at the end of the day. Like I think it, like you're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog too, right? Where it's like it's taking elements of what Sonic is about, but a lot of that movie also has human characters that have nothing to do with the game. So for me, it's like Tetris is the mover in this movie, where it's the reason all these characters exist in the first place. So to me, it's very much the subject. But I don't know, like for me, the special sauce I think was that kind of charm it had when it was revealing the tech, when it was revealing the kind of, oh, this character is actually a spy this whole time. I don't know, it's just like a very well-made movie, and I feel like we need to start giving well-made movies more props. I think when we watch a lot of
A tier's a lot of props.
but I don't know, I'm looking at like Prince of Persia. I'd put this movie above that. I'm just looking at like what's in this S tier. Like I don't know. Gran Turismo, I think, like I said, has that rewatchability. I think this one might lose a little bit of it because it's one of those movies where you know all the plot twists coming up, and those kind of loses its charm. That's the only critique I would have for like a long-term basis of this film. But like, yeah, I'd probably watch this or put this over. Yeah, Prince of Persia, probably Detective Pikachu. Still waiting for the sequel on that. I thought that was coming, but it seems like they're in no rush.
They didn't work on it until like recently. Well, boys, it's settled. Tetris is an S-tier film, which nets Devin 6 points so far. Because
makes me nervous. I thought I was a shoo-in with my 7
I
points.
feel good because of the fact that like if you picked Tetris and I would have gotten Gran Turismo, it wouldn't I'm glad that like my draft board so far has been pretty like spot on.
We'll get to that. So, Devin, as folks at home might notice, above our heads there's our scores and there's a decimal point system. Real quick, let me show you guys the rubric, show the audience the rubric here. S is 6 points, A is 5. You just count down in points. There's a counterpoint to this system. We'll talk about that in a few more weeks as we finally get to our counterpoint thing on our 7th film that we'll be reviewing. But very basic kind of rubric thing going on here. For the decimal point system, it's kind of a bit of a tiebreaker because this can become close. Last season, I won with less than a point, so this was very much like a necessary thing, which is why I made so many wild shots with my picks. Because I already won. I have nothing to prove, and I wanted to watch my movies. That's why I picked them. I'm going to be real with you. I wanted to watch Street Fighter. That's why I picked it.
Could have been your last pick, but.
Hey, all of my movies could have
I think it was like literally me and David's like down the. If I remember correctly, it was like
that was Super Mario Brothers. You guys said was your last pick out of all 24 of them. But,
I'm not
our decimal point
looking
system.
Forward to that one.
Our decimal, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. I think we'll talk about that as later. It's later. I have my next movie between my next movie's next, and we're going to talk about that in another future episode of the Sonic Movie Show. Our decimal point system is based off of the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. So whatever that percentage number is on that page for this movie is what Devin will get as a decimal. So David has 6.98 because the audience score on Rotten
Probably the
Tomatoes
highest
for Gran
we'll ever
Turismo
get.
was
I don't-
98%.
No one's
which is
tapping that. That was-
insane. My movie, Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, had an 18%, which shocked me.
Brutal.
So, Devin,
yeah.
why don't you, because you're the guy, pull up the
I have
Rotten
it. I'm
Tomatoes
looking at it.
page. What
gotta
is
be
the
high.
score?
I always like when y'all guess. Just give me a guess. I'll say this: a tomato meter. This is a rare movie where the tomato meter and the audience score are actually within 6 of each other, which is
Wow.
rare. Usually
Really?
it's like a good 10 to 15, if not. Sometimes you get a movie like Godzilla vs. Kong where audience score is like 80,
Sure.
and then critics are like, "This is shit." 19%, for example. So
I will throw out my guess as 79%.
okay.
That's a solid guess. God, that's
Yeah,
solid.
we should have done a game
80
within a game where I had my game for points for you two to guess.
80, 87. Going higher.
Okay, David's on the dime. 87%.
Wow.
Oh, do I get an extra point?
No.
The tomato
God
meter.
damn.
David,
in
you have
the-
twice as many points as me. We
give
only
me my
watched one
points.
movie each.
I want more points. No, the tomato meter. So what the reviewers had it certified fresh at 81%. But yeah, audience score of over 1,000 ratings, 87%.
Wow.
Wow.
I nailed it.
So,
Tetris
Devin's-
offers a fun, fizzy account of the story behind an 8-bit classic.
Perfect. Devin's score sits at 6.87.
I'll
Right
take
above
that
him,
after what David just
at
dropped.
6.98, and I'm
God
way down
damn.
in the gutter.
It's
with
gonna come down to that depth.
3.18.
It's gonna come down to that
We're
depth. That's all
keeping it close.
Yeah.
Now,
No,
folks, we
I'm
just
I wish-
started.
I was gonna say I wish that no one. If you didn't pick Gran Turismo, remember I had back to
It
back
would have
picks.
been over.
Oh my god,
it
it'd
would've
been
been
over
over.
already.
It would have been so Jover.
14 points.
But, that was our first pick. That was Devin's first pick. Gran Turismo was David's first pick. Street Fighter was my first pick.
What are the next? What's the next 3?
So,
just so we know.
The
Since
next
we've
3
done
are
a full
all of our
3.
second picks. The next movie you're going to listen to on this channel or watch on YouTube, as we recommend, is the 2010 film Tekken. That was my second pick. David's second pick follows mine. It is Max Payne. I am very interested, and I didn't even know the movie
no.
existed before we did
We'll
this.
see.
And then Devin's second pick is Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms, the second animated anthology Warner Brothers
the
animation film
first
of a modern
animate-
time.
Second animated.
Second animated. Because remember, Flight of the Scorpions or Scorpion's Revenge was the first one. We watched
No,
that
I meant
last
like,
season.
is this our first animated of our list? I think so.
Yes. Yeah. Mortal Kombat will be our first animated. And then, so that's the next trio of films. I want to thank both of you guys for, showing up and we watched a fun movie together, separately, but together in spirit. But, that's all
We watched
time
it
is
together
all
at
ended.
theater.
Exactly. Because, we need to move on. Before we go, it's time for everyone's new favorite game show, Communism versus Capitalism.
Oh
That's
my
right,
God.
guys. That's right. We're here to settle it once and for all. Really to determine which one of these economic systems is
Wow.
the best. Now,
Economic.
We only have-
see, you're already.
hey,
doing
I am
definitions
boiling
wrong.
it down. Devin, we only have 15 minutes here.
It's a way of
so I
life.
really want to make sure, because, when I say best, there are so many different ways. Best at what? Best for an individual, best for a society, best for a government, best long-term, best short-term. We need to determine which is best overall, and there's many ways we can do that. I just feel like the best way about going about it is determining which one sounds the most based on the people that are famously
Based?
talking about
What?
it.
Okay.
So,
I
here's
still
how this
don't
is
know
gonna
what we're
work.
doing.
I don't know. Either.
here's how this is going to work. Also, quick before we get into it, David has won 2 game shows. Devin has won one game show. Our draft episode had a game show in it. That's why, we've had 3
I
so
gotta
far.
tie it up here. Going down
And
3-1.
You might with this, who knows? So here's how this is going to work, guys, and the audience out there. I'm going to read off 6 separate, individualized segments of speeches from famous capitalists and communists.
Oh,
They're not
okay.
questions, but they're like, we did 6 questions, so I'm doing 6 of these. I'm going to read these. I'm going to read them a little bit slowly. At any point, either one of you can buzz in while I'm reading.
Oh, saying who it is.
And say if it's if a communist or a capitalist said it. If you get it correctly, you get 5 points. If you get it wrong, you lose 3 points.
Oh my
Because
god!
we're not gonna have the other person
Famous
steal
capitalists.
because
That could be
there's
literally like
only,
anybody.
2 things. As a bonus, because it's not required. As a bonus, if you can guess who the person is that said this, I'll give you 2 points. So there we go.
That's where I need to get my points. Then I'm gonna.
You get it.
I mean,
you get
God,
it
have an
correct if it's
advantage on
capitalist
David
or
here
communist.
on
It's 5
historical
points.
figures.
If you get it wrong, you lose 3. But if you can also,
Wait, what?
guess the person who said it. If you,
Wait, you
so
lose
as
3?
I'm reading this, if you buzz in, Devin, and you say that's capitalist, and it's right, you get 5 points. But if you were wrong, you're gonna lose 3 points. So you gotta really make sure you know before you
Just
buzz
gonna play
in.
for the 0. Just don't buzz in. See if David just falls apart.
Just gets a little bit
Just
hey,
that's my
it's
strategy.
a 50-50
I don't know, I've been
if you're
winning.
The
guessing.
negative. Is there negatives? I should ask.
Yes.
Well, there's got to be because if you answer everyone wrong,
All right, I'm
Yeah,
just hope
absolutely.
David gets a -10, then I just don't answer after that.
Oh my god. All right.
Make Ethan read the entire speech.
nice,
I'm going to
yeah.
begin. Here we go with our first speech segment. As a national war of resistance is going on, we must also fight for our military power for the nation. Where there is naivete on the question of military power, nothing whatsoever can be achieved. It is very difficult for the laboring people who have been deceived and intimidated by the reactionary ruling classes for thousands of years
Devin.
to awake. Devin?
That's communist, and that sounds like Stalin. Do I lose points for guessing a person?
You do not lose points for guessing a person incorrect.
I'm gonna guess Stalin somewhere on World War II.
Okay, Devin says communist and he says Stalin. That is partially correct. That is Mao saying that. Oh man, hold on 1 second.
Once I heard the labor,
Yeah,
I'm like, nah, capitalists don't talk like
reacted
that.
too late.
I'm
Okay.
like, no president.
I forgot what.
The
Well,
first part I was like, that could hear like
That
I
could
don't
be
know
good.
Eisenhower saying something like that, and then like
Yeah.
once I heard that,
I
was
forgot what we were supposed to say. I was like, "What are we supposed to say?" And then you
I'll
were
just
like,
say your
"Yeah."
own name. That's right. You
No,
just say
I
your
know.
own name to buzz in. It's capitalist or communist. Okay.
I'm just making excuses.
On to our second speech fragment here. We can counter hypocrisy and lies with the complete and honest truth. The war has shown plainly enough what the will of the
David.
majority means. David?
Capitalists, and I'm gonna go. Shoot, what is his name? Who's the
Obama.
prime minister of
I'm not helping
Britain?
him.
Winston Churchill.
David says capitalist. He says Winston Churchill. That is incorrect. David
What?
loses 3 points.
Oh, huge!
Whoa!
That was Lenin. Now, David,
Oh,
if
wow.
you wasted a little bit longer, you would have heard me say a phrase used as a cover by the bourgeoisie.
Oh, that would have
okay,
been
wow.
That would have.
I'll be honest. I did think it was capitalist at first. It sounded like something a president would say,
Yeah.
like during wartime. So I totally get where you're coming from.
But
That's a
I
fair
didn't
guess.
want to get a beat by Devin
Yep.
again. It's too quick.
That was the one and only.
But I lost.
I almost said it, but I was
saying
like, I need to hear like one more sentence before I'm sure. So
that. Okay.
Oh boy. It's
So
not good.
far, I mean,
8
also
down.
communism's winning. Next one.
No.
But I have an uncomfortable feeling that this prosperity isn't something on which we can base our hopes for the future. No nation in history has ever survived a tax burden that reached a
Devin.
third of Devin.
I'm gonna say capitalists, and this is wrong, but I'm just gonna say George Bush, George H.W. Sorry.
Wow.
90s.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Devin says
Maybe.
George H.W. Bush.
I'm like,
He
go
says
for
capitalist.
like I don't know, like post Reagan. I don't know. Times are tough. I don't know.
Devin, you're close. It is capitalist. It is Reagan, though.
Oh.
Oh, I should have.
So,
Because
God.
Bush HW is a lot like Reagan in his speeches on purpose. So I was like, let me not go Reagan. I'll go HW. I'm like, I could see him kind of
It's
saying
not
something like that.
Devin, you have 10 points. David, you are -3.
-3.
Yes.
See, now I can play.
Oh,
Once I get a
boy.
lead, I could just play not to say
This is
anything and
not
hope he
good.
just starts messing up. And sometimes it's worth
True.
it.
All right.
Hold
On
the
to
lead.
our fourth segment here.
How many is there?
6 in total.
Okay, this might be it. So I can
Oh,
lock it in
boy.
right here. Let's go.
On the contrary, we must increase it as much as it is within our powers and possibilities. To slacken the tempo would mean falling behind, and those who fall behind get beaten. But we do not want to be beaten. No, we refuse to be beaten.
David.
David?
Oh no. I
Do I get
really
a chance
think
to
it's
No.
steal?
Well, you can before he says you can guess. You don't get any points though. I'm
He wants
gonna
you to give him a
say
hint.
communist.
David says
Um,
communist.
I don't know who. Stalin.
David
wouldn't be able to-
says Stalin. He says communist. David, you... My God, buddy, you got to get it together. And you are. That was completely correct. That was Stalin. And that was communist.
Shit. Coming back.
David, you have 4 points now. Not -3. You have +4.
There's some Marxist Leninist watching this right now who's like, oh my God, that's so base. Stalin's so fucking base there. He's so true. And I'll be like, okay. Those are my favorite people on Twitter, let me tell you.
Devin, stop projecting. 5th one now.
I'm not projecting.
Oh my god! I still gotta get these next two right. The
You
extra
have to
2
get them
points
both right or
didn't
hope
help
Devin
me.
gets it wrong. Here we go. 5th one now. Although they accept that our policies are right, they feel deeply that the burden of carrying them out is falling much more heavily on the private than on the public sector. They say that the
Devin.
public sector... Devin?
I'm going to go capitalist. I don't think communists talk about the private and public sector. Who's going to say it? Obama.
Devin
Oh,
says
Obama.
Barack
I think that was
Obama.
mine. I think that was
He
mine.
said-
Says
Interesting.
capitalist. That is a capitalist. It's not Obama. It's Thatcher.
Oh, even
Margaret
better.
Thatcher. Yeah.
Are all our heroes.
Man, famous speech I had to read a lot of, and I'm like, same thing with Stalin, trying to make sure I can find 3 sentences or long things I can chop up, like sentences that don't say, like, communism, capitalism. God, Stalin says capitalism so much in that freaking speech. I just needed a
sure.
segment about the economy, somewhat, whatever. All right, well, Devin, you won. Sorry, David, but we have one more for fun. Our final 6th question here.
Double or nothing.
No.
Sorry, I can't.
Wow.
Unless Devin
Wow.
wants to agree to it. If you guys want to agree to it, then you can.
No, I have to take this
No,
one.
yeah,
if I
you
was
gotta-
up, like, if I've won all of them, I would say yes, but
I respect it.
All right.
I gotta
Here's
take
our
the
last
W.
one.
I'm still going
The
for
top-
it.
Okay, let me talk. The top 10% consistently took home about 1/3 of our national income. But that kind of inequality took place in a dynamic market economy where everyone's wages and incomes were growing. And because of upward mobility, the guy on the factory floor could picture his kid running the company someday.
David.
David,
I mean, that's gotta be capitalist.
who do you think said it?
Oh man. Who would have said that? Would you put 2 Reagans in here?
can I have a guess?
I'm gonna.
just for fun.
Yeah, I'll say Reagan, and then I want to hear Devin's guess.
I think it is capitalist as well. The word "guy" makes me think it's someone newer, and I think it's Joe Biden. I think you can't put this whole game show together and not put Joe Biden. We got a guy on the factory floor who can get to the
that
top.
does actually sound a little bit. Yeah.
Anyone can do.
Sorry.
Anyone in America can do it. Let me tell you.
David, you're right. It is a capitalist. It is not Reagan. It's also not Joe Biden. This one is Barack Obama.
Damn
Oh
it.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, David, you had 9 points. Devin, you had 15 points. Congratulations, Devin, on your win. Sounds like capitalism won after all. At least on your side of the screen, capitalism is on the right, and so therefore you're tied to the capitalism. There you go. David has been awarded his
Finally a
second
game
trophy.
favoring me.
You guys are tied up 2-2.
And you won.
I know. I had to. If I didn't win this one, then it was definitely
That would've
over for
been-
the rest. For the
Yeah.
rest of these, because I had
Well,
to
who
take the
knows?
history one. I had to.
Remember, folks, every single video game movie review we do has one of these kind of game shows in it, and every type of game show is going to be different. Different types of answering questions, different types of asking questions. Usually 6 is what I like in total, keeps it nice and short. And who knows? There are tiebreakers, and as we get closer to the end, there might be some spicier ways to make up lost, falling back, contestants.
We have
But
to
as of right
fight.
now,
We
we're
have to fight
tied.
in real life.
I'm going to let you guys know right now, I really, really was trying to think of a way to make this game show an actual debate between communism and capitalism, and I was going to have you guys just try to convince
Oh
me.
my god.
Oh my god.
But that could have gone on for too long, and I don't know if you guys would have been into it, so I was just like, I just got to make,
I think it'd been funny, but I also think I would. No, I don't know. It'd be a tough. I just also don't like debates when it comes to that kind of stuff.
We're all friends here, and you know what friends like to do? They like to remind you of where you can watch our show. On YouTube, preferably. You can go ahead and subscribe, click the bell, and comment below if you like Tetris just in general. We're also on Apple Music, Spotify, Audible, and the like. As a social platform, Sonic Moon Show can be found on Instagram, Threads,
As a socialist.
TikTok, and Twitter, otherwise known as X. Apparently it's X.com now, so whenever Devin sends me a tweet, since my app is a year and a half out of date, so I can keep the Twitter app icon on my home screen, I now have to go to the website to view the Twitter post that you send me, because it doesn't redirect to the app anymore. So yeah. But anyway, yeah, there you can subscribe, and you can do all that stuff. Thank you both for joining us, me and the audience,
Welcome.
that is. And I hope that we're going to enjoy the next movie even more, so I can get some dang points on the board. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Salute, comrades.